How many of you feel like you've been going through some stuff lately? I didn't expect big amens there because no one gets excited about that, do they? I mean, he's going through a battle. Amen! Glory! Maybe we ought to act like that a little bit. I know that that's tough and that don't seem right, but maybe we ought to. Look at what Jesus says in Matthew the 5th chapter. This is the Sermon on the Mount. And this is kind of still early on in the message. You think I preach long. This Sermon on the Mount one, they say that was a real long, that was a several hour message right there that I won't do that to you. I'll just take an expert of it. How about that? That's what he says in verse 10 of Matthew 5. It said, "Blessed are those who are persecuted." Are you kidding me? I mean, you just feel blessed when you're being persecuted a little bit. What a blessing. Just praise God, I get to go through it. What a blessing. May we all look at it that way. He said, "Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." I thought this next verse might resonate with some of you. Blessed are you when people insult you. How many's ever been insulted? You're blessed. Turn to your neighbor, tell them, "I'm blessed," evidently. I didn't feel it at the time, but evidently I was. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. How many's ever had somebody say some evil things that didn't happen? Try and tear you down. Jesus goes on to say, "Rejoice and be glad." Rejoice and be glad. That must be a misprint. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And then he tells you, goes in the next, here's how you're supposed to be. When all this persecution's happening, when everything's seems to be going wrong, and somehow or another you're supposed to be blessed because of it, here's how he goes in how you're supposed to live your life. Watch, he says, here's one, because you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, no longer good for anything out of it. Cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl, but instead put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others. Now, you might be missing something, but the others, he just said, were those who were persecuting you. The others that were mentioned were those who were saying false stuff against you. The others that were mentioned in context are those who insulted you. He said, what do you do with them? Let your light shine before others. Here's why, because then they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Real quick, I forgot to do this, but those that are going to the next level, the kids that are going into youth, you can go ahead and head out. And then, just in context, before your seed this morning, will you turn to a few people and say, Bible told me to be salty, so I'm just going to be salty. Just going to be a little salty. Now, maybe we're not supposed to be salty like the slang is that the millennials are saying now. My daughter would tell me at first, she would say, Dad, you're salty. I thought, well, that's a good thing. I used to say thank you. Well, thank you for that. She'd go, that's not good. That means you're bitter. Well, my bad. I wasn't meaning to be salty. But I don't think Jesus was implying that you be bitter when he said to be salty, but we are supposed to be salty. But I think you've got to go to the part where it starts out that Jesus is starting out in the context of you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world. He starts off with the blessed. You're blessed. You're blessed, and he uses a phrase that is hard to understand. He says, look, you're blessed when you're persecuted. That goes against everything you've ever been taught before. That goes against everything taught in the American Christian church. We get this idea when we're persecuted, there must have been something happen because I'm supposed to be the head, not the tail. Blessed going in, coming out. Well, sometimes going in, you get persecuted and you're blessed. We don't look at persecution as a blessing. You are quiet on me this morning. I don't know what happened to the church that we left. But I was just gone a week. And yes, I shaved my beard. Maybe that's kind of the stuff you are looking at right now. Although, man, I did hear that, man, Jenna tore it up last week. I heard she was going after my job. That she just preached the just her heart and just tore it up, and I will try and just compare a little bit to her this morning. You gotta be blessed when you're persecuted, and that's hard to grasp. It's hard to understand the teaching. I can just guess the disciples are telling Jesus at this point in his message, tone it down. Leave out persecution. You're wanting people to follow you. Don't talk about the persecution part. Don't talk about that, hey, they persecuted me, they're going to persecute you. They persecuted the prophets, they're going to persecute you. If they insult me and say false things about me, they're going to do it about you. It's just a blessing. Look at it different. I can see that the disciples, Peter probably, because he's outspoken, was probably nudging him saying, move it on. Get off this. Go on to where they're blessed because hey, you're just blessing them. Go on that hey, they're blessed when they get a raise. They like to hear that stuff. Or they're blessed They're blessed when they get a new car. Well, Peter, they don't have cars, but they will. They're blessed when they get a new house. They're blessed because that's where we count our blessings, isn't it? When something good happens to it, oh, I'm blessed. Oh man, God just blessed me with a new car. When the payments start coming in, we look at different with that enemy, that devil. But I'm blessed. I'm blessed when I got a new house. I'm blessed when I got boy, God's just blessing me. When was the last time you heard somebody, man, I've just really been going through a trial right now. Oh, what a blessing. What a blessing that is. That's pure joy right there. Just going through something tough. Man, my family's falling apart. What a blessing. My kids are out of control. What pure joy right now I'm going through. But maybe we're supposed to look at it a little bit different and expect those things. Because look at what, I think the early church, when I read, the early church lived in that mindset. When they went through persecutions, when they went through trials, when they went through situations, when they went through the hard things, they looked at it as a blessing. And I know it's hard to shout and get excited about it, but they looked at it as a blessing. Look at it became part of their testimony in Acts chapter 5. Whenever they were taken and they were beaten for preaching the gospel. Get this. You think we live in a tough age because, man, I posted something about God on Facebook and I got some people commenting in my thing that I need to not say that stuff because it offended them. And we go through, oh my, it's so hard to be a Christian today. They said something about me. I'm just trying to serve God. These guys, Peter and John, were beaten for preaching the gospel. Not somebody unfriended them. I know that's harsh, isn't it? They were beaten. They were whipped, beaten, and then told, do not preach anymore. And here's the response. Look at this. In Acts chapter 5, verse 41, it says, so they departed from the presence of the council. After just being beaten, they departed rejoicing. Are you kidding me? Watch the reason of their rejoicing. That they were counted worthy to suffer shame for his name. They rejoiced. They counted it because they were counted worthy to be beaten for his name, to suffer for his name. James, this is so inbred in the early church. James, when he starts his letter that was written to the church, first verse of James, he starts out with just the introduction of who he is. I'm James. Nice to meet you. Let me tell you about God now. And look at his second verse in the letter. It says, and I like this translation, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. Consider it pure joy. Man, how many is ever, man, I'm just going through something. What a joy. Man, just pure joy right there. Not this imitation stuff. That's pure joy when I got to go through that. I didn't know how I was going to make it through it. What joy. We call those people crazy. Early church, James put this at the beginning of his letter. He started off his letter this way. This is the first chapter, second verse. He starts off his letter. You know it's going to talk about now trials. You know it's going to, when he starts it off, hey, consider it pure joy when you go through this kind of mess. Whenever you go through this stuff, consider it pure joy that you have the opportunity to go through it. They kept reading. We would open up that book, read that like, I don't want that one. Where's something that just talks about how I can get a raise and be blessed? Let me find another book. This one's not going to make the New York Times bestseller. That's not a good introduction. Count it pure joy when you go through trials of all kinds. But the early church, they cherished it. That was their mindset. They cherished it so much that they held on to this letter. They shared it with other churches. They kept it. We have this letter today because they not only read it, but they cherished it. Oh, count it pure joy that I get to go through something. How would our mindset be if we went with that kind of attitude? Because here's the thing, listen, we all go through trials. Do we not? Am I not preaching to you this morning? Are you not with me in this place? We didn't change our denomination, did we, last week while I was gone? We are still Pentecostal, are we not? It's okay to amen, and it's okay to preach with me. I don't get offended with that. We all go through stuff. We all go through trials. We all go through difficulties. We all go through situations. We all go through persecutions. We all go through insults. We all go through people lying about. We all go through that stuff. So how do you live that way? I'm afraid the persecution causes us to be salty. Come on. Instead of the salt of the earth. I'm afraid that we allow the persecutions to make us salty by world standards, that we're bitter, and I don't want to talk about it. I can't believe and we go around and we have a frown on our face, and we go, and people are just saying, man, they're just salty. I'm trying to say it so much that I've learned if I say this a bunch, they'll quit saying it. No longer be cool anymore. No longer cool to say it's salty. Gotta think of something else. But we're supposed to be, look, even though I go through this stuff, here's how I'm supposed to be. Jesus said, you're to be two things. You're to be salt and light. Salt and light. You're the salt of the earth. I know we don't have a real grasp and understanding of the value of what salt was in that time period. Salt was everything to them. You might not grasp this. Salt was everything. In fact, Roman soldiers in that time period, part of their salary was salt.
They were paid in salt. That's why that phrase, this person's worth their salt, that's where it comes from. It's because they were paid in salt. Why? Because salt was so valuable to them at that time. In fact, the word salary, that we get, the word salary comes from a root word of salt in Latin. Because salt was worth something. Salt was valuable. When Jesus said, hey, you're to be the salt of the earth, you've got some value in you. You've got some worth in you, some substance in you. You're to be the salt around everybody. You're the one that's in this earth that's supposed to be the value. Here's why it was so valuable. Because back then at that time, they didn't have refrigeration. Do you know how they preserved? When he's talking to fishermen, when he's talking to all these people, the farmers, the ranchers, when he's talking to all of them, they understood the value of the salt, because without refrigeration, the meat that they had, the fish that were caught, they would spoil if it wasn't for the fact that they would rub them down and pack them in salt, because the salt would preserve it so that they could use it later. It preserved it. Why was it so valuable of a substance to the armies? Because the soldiers, in order for them to ration their food out, had to have the salt that they could pack the food in so that they could eat it later. It was a valuable source. Here's what it was to them at that time period. Salt was a preserving agent. When he said, you're the salt of the earth, look at it this way. You're the agent that God uses to preserve, to save a world. A world that is going to spoil and rot and stink. Come on now. What keeps this from happening? When we gripe about how our world is right now, when we gripe about, man, I can't believe that they're killing babies like they're killing babies. I can't believe the mindset right now of thinking that third trimester abortion is fine. Or even, even up to and after birth, it's okay to still abort. That mindset, that thinking, that's rotten and stinking. And we can gripe all we want about how they come to a place, but I'm telling you, the only way that they're coming to a place like that is that the church has failed to salt. If the world around you is starting to stink, maybe you're not salting the world around you. If the world around you is starting to rot, maybe the church is failing to be salt in a world, and instead we're just being salty because they're persecuting us instead of the salt. You see, if we're being the salt of the earth, we are saving the earth. We are saving the earth from spoiling, from rotting. Here's another thing that salt is. It's not just that it's a preserving agent for back then, but it's also a cleansing and a healing agent back then. I mean, you've ever heard the phrase, it's like rubbing salt in a wound. You know why they got that phrase? Because they would rub salt in a wound. Some of you begin to cringe at that moment because you know what it does. It stings. It burns. It doesn't feel good, right? But it heals. See, we've been backing off because they've whined at first because of what we said, what we preached. That burned a little bit, that stung. Oh, I won't do it again. No, keep it up. Sometimes it hurts when we get healed. Sometimes what the world needs, I'm not saying do it out of anger. I'm not saying do it mean. I'm out of love. Out of love, you cleanse. Out of love, you heal. Out of love, you are the salt of the earth. I'm telling you, people around you should be healed just because they're around you. People who used to say, man, I didn't like what you were saying at first, but now I find that really needed to happen, and now I feel a lot better, and a healing begins to take place. People should be healed just because they're around you. Why? Because you are the salt of the earth. I'm a healing agent. I'm a cleansing agent. Back in those days, they would make sure if they had wounds, if they had cuts, they would find salt water to go and dip in. And yes, they knew, boy, it stung. Could you imagine jumping in the Dead Sea with a cut? They say, this little bit of sting, it's going to help me later, so I'll get in. Because they knew it was a cleansing, it was a healing, it was a preservative. Listen, you are the salt. Jesus said, and I'm afraid this is what's happened. He said, if the salt loses its flavor. He's saying if the salt loses its effectiveness, it's good for nothing. In fact, he gave a prophetic word of what will happen to a church or his people if they lose their effectiveness as the salt of the earth. He said, you might as well just throw it on the ground so that people will walk on you. It's just road. That's all. That's all. If the salt loses its flavor, it's just, might as well just throw it, make a road out of it, and let people just walk and trample all over you. And if you've come to a place that you feel like you're just constantly being walked on, it's going to rub some salt in the wound right now. If you feel like you're constantly being walked on, maybe you've lost your effectiveness. Maybe you've lost your flavor. Maybe you're no longer a preservative to those around you. Maybe you're no longer a healing agent or a cleansing agent to those around you. You're just salty. No flavor. He said, look, my people are supposed to change a world, and here's how it will happen if they become the salt of the earth. But then they have to also be the light of the world. It's not enough to just be salt. Here's why. Because the light of the world shines on him. And I want you to grasp what he's saying when he's saying you're the light of the world. You are the light of the world. Because it's not just about you doing some good deeds. There's a lot of evil people that do good deeds. There's bad people with bad hearts that do good deeds. And God doesn't get any glory for it. But when I'm the light of the world, here's what I am. The best way I can think to describe it, how I am the light of the world. When John talks about, John at the beginning, when he writes his book, when he's talking at the very beginning, he's talking about God coming and that God was the light of the world. That God was the light, that Jesus was the light. He mentions John the Baptist. In fact, at probably around verse 5 or 6, he's saying there's a man sent from God whose name was John. And John's job was to bear witness of the light. John went on, as he's writing the book, describing John the Baptist, he goes on saying at a point, he says he was not that light. I don't want you to get it wrong. John the Baptist was not the light. He was just sent to bear witness of the light. That was the true light, speaking of Jesus. So John's writing about John the Baptist and about Jesus, and he's saying, look, John the Baptist is not the light. But he did bear witness of the light. He was a reflection. Now, follow me. I'll get there, I promise. He was just to bear witness of the light. He wasn't the light. I got to thinking, if John the Baptist wasn't the light, how can I be the light? I don't know if you know what Jesus said of John the Baptist. There's a phrase that Jesus used saying, born among women. There's been none greater than John. John the Baptist. Boy, born among women, there's been no greater than him. I think, man, if John wasn't the light, and there's been none greater than John, how can I be the light? If John the Baptist was the greatest, and this is Jesus' words, if born among women, there's been none greater than John. Jesus would know because he was there since Adam on. And before. So, he would know, he's ranking them. He would know, if Jesus says there's been none greater than John, then guess what? There's been none greater than John. That's how it is. And if John's not the light, how can I be the light? But then I saw it. It said he was to bear witness of the light. Let me give you the greatest example I can think of it's in creation. God created the sun. It talks about that he also created a lesser light to rule by night. Do you know what that is? Just science, real quick. The moon. All right, good deal. The moon. If you know anything about science, on a dark night, clear skies, full moon, that moon will shine bright in the sky, right? But there's no light in the moon. There is no light of the moon on its own. You know where it gets its light source from? The sun, the greater light. All the moon is a reflection of that light. Some of you are starting to know where I'm going with this right now. In a dark world, in a dark night sky, the moon that shines bright in the sky for the earth in the darkness of it is just a reflection of the light from the sun hitting it. So what you are seeing in a dark night is really the light of the sun. It's just shining off the moon onto the earth. And Jesus said, you are the light of the world. Here's how you light up. It's when others see me, a reflection of the sun shining off of you into a dark world. At that moment, that's how I'm the light of the world. It's not that somebody sees my good works and my good deeds and it's not me getting credit. It's when they see God shining through me, when they see God and He's getting glorified, that is when we are the light of the world. I'm telling you, in order for us to shine, it should just be that others are seeing Christ in you. So we can go on to say, yes, you're going to be persecuted. They persecuted me. Yes, they're going to lie about you. They lied about me. They're just doing it because why? They are seeing you in, oh, come on now. They're seeing me in you. So they're going to continue to persecute me. But don't worry, you're blessed. I'm blessed. I'm blessed if I'm salt and if I'm light. If I'm saving the world, if I'm saving my friends, if I'm saving my community, if I'm sharing with them what God's done, if I'm a healing agent, a preserving agent, a life-giving agent, how can it happen? It's not going to be because of me. It's only going to be when I'm a reflection of Him. He's the true light. He's the light of the world. I'm just a reflection. And when I reflect Him, I shine. You know, on a dark night, when the moon fails to shine, it's not because the sun isn't still bright. It's not because the sun has lessened its effectiveness. It's that the moon's not reflecting it. I'm not that good at the science. I used to think, well, the world got in the way, and that's why. But I don't think that's right. I don't know necessarily how that works, that there's the new moon that they say, or the no moon. It's just not effective anymore. And if we're not being a light to the world around us, it's not because God's not shining. It's not because His power or His light is any less than it's ever been. It would have to go back to me that I'm just not reflecting. Maybe I've let some things get in the way. But now I'm not effective anymore. Here's my cry in this time that we're in. God, let me be the salt. Let me be the light. Let me make a change in this world. And quit complaining about the fact that I'm being persecuted, and I just start being the salt and the light. would that look like in your family? What would that look like in your home? What would that look like on your job? In your community? If all of a sudden they quit seeing you and they saw Jesus in you. You've got some worth. You have some value. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. I want you to stand with me this morning. My job as a Christian isn't that people see me. My job is that people see Him. If all they do is see me, I get glorified. But if they see Him in me, God gets glorified. You're the salt. You're the light. I want you to bow your heads with me this morning. I want to pray over you right now. Because I know it's easy as you go through things to be bitter instead of being blessed. But I'm bitter when I refuse to be the salt and the light. So I want to pray over you that bitterness would leave and that joy would come in. That you would be able to rejoice like the early church. That you would be able to feel a pure joy as James talked about. Because you are salt and light. Heavenly Father, right now, God, I pray that God, that your people would begin to see themselves as you see them. God, they are the preserving, the cleansing, the healing agent of this world that seems to be rotting before our eyes. God, they are the source that can come in and heal. Oh God, I pray that they become the salt of the earth. Oh, that they come in and their jobs and their families and in their communities and their life where you've placed them, that God, that they are just spreading out as salt that cleanses and heals a broken world that is around them. God, I pray that they begin to shine so bright wherever they go, that God, that those around them can only see you shining through them.